Welcome to the Catholic Midlife podcast, where we address the challenges and the opportunities of midlife from a uniquely Catholic perspective. This is the time, my friends, for a deeper renewal of your Christian vocation. Come and enter into the freedom of Christ that allows you to be the person you were created to be, because there's an amazing, awesome, exciting next season of life waiting for you. Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Midlife Podcast. This is Karen Herbert, and you are here with episode 89 of the Catholic Midlife Podcast, where we're talking about relating to our young adult children. And today is one of our most favorite episodes ever. I think you're going to be able to tell very quickly that this is a skill that Curtis and I love. We love to talk about it. We love to practice it, and we encourage you to do so also. I encourage you, as you listen to this episode, just listen carefully and consider, how can you practice this skill with those around you right now?
Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Midlife Podcast. It's great to be here with you. I'm Curtis, and I'm here with Karen.
Hi, all you podcast listeners.
Hey, good morning, Karen. How are you doing?
I'm great. The sun is shining. The lawnmowers are out today. The leaves are gently blowing in the wind. It's a great day.
That's great. So here's a review a listener left for us, Karen. It's from Castelli Gal. Do you think that's her real name, Gal, like Gal Gadot?
I would guess likely not.
What?
Now, don't quote me on that, but this is just my sort of instinctual reaction.
It's a cute moniker, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on iTunes. She says, "Love this podcast. I'm really enjoying Karen and Curtis's podcast. It's helping me identify what I'm going through as a midlifer and become more reflective about it. The podcast is also giving me encouragement and a robust hope about my future."
Oh, hooray. Hope. That's what we like. So something's landing.
Yeah. So, Gal, thanks for the encouragement, and thanks for leaving a review, which helps others find the podcast and hopefully find some hope and midlife wisdom.
That's right. That's right. So today, we've got a good one today. I'm super excited.
I know you love this topic. It's a great topic.
Love this topic. It is my favorite communication and relationship tool. And I'll just throw this out there. This is something that's good for every relationship and almost every conversation. We're going to talk about it here today, specifically in terms of relating to your young adult, where it's super especially helpful. But it's really a great tool for everything. And you are using this tool. You're using it unconsciously already, probably without even realizing it. Some of you maybe use it more than others or more naturally than others, but all of you are using it. And the more you can use it consciously and intentionally, the stronger your communication and relationship will be. So I do love this.
Yeah, Karen, I would say this skill did more for my personal relationships than any other skill.
Wow.
Standing by itself, just this one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we encountered it when we were, raising our kids and going through some tough times. And it just made such a difference to incorporate it consistently in our conversations and our communication. So I'm just now realizing I haven't named this skill yet for people. So should I do that?
Yes.
Okay. The skill we're talking about is called validation. Validation. Maybe I'll let Curtis explain a little bit about what that means.
Well, I think the core of it, Karen, so when we're in a conversation and we want to communicate our perspective on something,
right?
Our perspective won't be received until the other person knows that their perspective is being received. So validation is all about communicating to the other person that you see what they're talking about from their perspective, and it's understandable, it's okay, that why they have the perspective that they do.
Right. Something you said really resonated with me, which is, and this is totally, I've experienced this on a lot of different levels, and it's when you're talking with someone and they just you just get the feeling like, okay, they're not going to hear what I've said until they have this feeling that they've been heard and validated. And once that happens, it's like then they can move into a different space of trying to understand the other person's perspective. But first, their perspective needs to be validated. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, it's always up to us
Right.
to take the initiative, right?
Yes.
So we have to understand them first and let them know we understand.
Yes.
And we can all think of situations where our perspective just isn't being heard, and it's super frustrating.
Oh my goodness. This totally happened to me recently. So
Okay, what
you
happened?
probably remember this, but we were at that training and we were in these extremely uncomfortable chairs. So this is like a 12-hour day training for 4 days. And the chairs were really uncomfortable. And the expectation was you're taking notes in this really crazy, uncomfortable way. And I could tell, okay, I'm going to have a back flare up.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some symptoms here. And I kept going to the administrators trying to explain this isn't going to work for me. And they just, like, I kept getting those rote answers, like these 5, they must have been quoting them from some manual. This is what you say when somebody doesn't want to sit in the chairs, here's your 5 things. And it's true. I totally felt unheard, and it was extremely frustrating. And I couldn't enter into the training until they listened and heard my perspective.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, what's your name? Karen. They're like, oh, figures.
Oh,
We're not
that's awful.
We're not
I can't believe
listening.
you said that.
We're not listening to you, man. You're just conflating. You're just conflating.
Oh, I should not have to change my name to be heard and validated.
So they didn't understand that you have a back problem. And so it took them a day. So the next day they finally came around and figured it out.
They realized that it was a real issue. So anyway, so I can relate to the feeling unheard situation. So maybe we should give some examples about how this might come up with our young adults.
Yeah, sure. So let's start with something that's pretty simple. Just say you're talking with your college student. You've been talking to him over the semester, and you know that she's had a personality conflict with a teacher, and it's in a subject she doesn't like. And you're pretty sure your student didn't really put in the work. And here comes the grades. She got a bad grade, and she's upset. And you're having some kind of conversation about this. She's letting you know that she's feeling bad about getting this kind of grade. So how might you validate?
Right. So this is a really interesting example. I think I'm glad you picked this one because sometimes it's really interesting to be aware of like our immediate reaction into a situation like this because all sorts of things come up for us. A lot of them kind of in the judgment zone. Oh,
yeah. Well, I know my first reactions is to be like, oh, goody. Here's a great life lesson for dad to get. It's going to be something like, oh, well, you didn't do the work and now you got a bad grade. Go figure.
Yeah.
Maybe
surprise,
you'll work
surprise.
harder next time.
Yeah. It's really easy to have all those things kick in. You're just making excuses. You're not being serious. And you're the student, not the teacher. There's all sorts of things to say. And sort of pausing on that response and validating can be really transformative in a situation like that. So you could even say something like, sounds like you're really upset about your grade. I remember you were telling me that the teacher is really not relating well to you and the subject is annoying. And it's really frustrating when there's conflicts like that. It just makes the situation harder than it has to be. That's really hard for anybody.
Yeah, so that's a great response, Karen. You're showing that situation is relatable.
Right.
We can all imagine, I think, having a frustrating teacher and a frustrating subject and just not getting the job done.
Right.
And here's the thing, that student, she knows she didn't do the work.
Mm-hmm.
When we've messed up, having people tell us we messed up really isn't that helpful.
Yeah. And here's one thing to watch out for. Sometimes when we're validating, we want to like get through the validation so we can move on to the advice or response
Oh, right.
or learning point of the whole thing. And really, we have to let the validation sit, and we have to do it until the person feels validated, whatever that is for them. And they feel heard, because that's the pivot point where they can open up to having other kinds of conversations about that.
Yeah, Karen. So really, you're looking for, you can see a shift in them.
Yes, totally.
Usually in their body.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see some stress go out, or you'll just see in their face like how grateful they are that you didn't pile on to their misery.
Right.
And it's all about showing that, hey, considering who you are, your experiences, what you've been through, your values, that what you did, it makes sense. It's understandable.
Yes, it makes sense. Makes sense.
That is not the same thing. And I think this is what really trips a lot of us up, is showing that you understand doesn't mean approving, signing off.
Yeah, agreeing. Yeah.
Doesn't mean affirming you in your slothing, I can't say the word, in your sloth.
Right. It's not the same. And actually, it's not the same. And sometimes it's not really the most helpful thing to just go right to the place where we don't agree or we want to have some change or some transformation. And sometimes we have to just validate in a conversation and not even move on to all that other stuff.
Yeah. Really depends a lot on what's happening. The way I like to describe this skill is you have to communicate to the other person that you understand their perspective. It makes sense at some level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's give them another example.
Okay, sure. Here's another example. So I'm Jane, and I have a brother, Joe.
Okay.
And I say to you, Mom, my brother Joe was always your favorite, so don't be guilting me over this Christmas visit that's 3 hours away.
I'm the mom, right?
You're always the mom, honey. What's a mom?
Okay. Well, all right. This is a really hard example you gave me.
Well, it's hard to be a mom, honey.
Let me tell you, it is.
Yeah.
It is. Okay. So there's a few things here. Honestly, I don't feel like I can right away validate you because I'm not totally sure that I understand all the issues. Well, there's a number of issues. So there's the relationship with the sibling issue. Like they were your favorite.
Yeah. Joe was always your favorite.
Okay.
So can't you just get me over that real quick?
That's one. Okay. The other one is this guilt feeling, like you're feeling guilted.
You're guilting me, Mom.
Oh,
you're
okay.
guilting me.
I'm guilting you.
Trip thing.
That's another issue. And then the whole issue, obviously, about are you going to come for Christmas or not, which is its own thing.
Yeah.
Because, come on, it's only 3 hours away. You can't even hop in the car and come visit your mother.
How hard is
Christmas?
that?
Okay. So there's three big issues going on here. And I think actually in order to validate, I have to understand your perspective a little better. So probably I have to ask you some questions. I might have to pick one of those issues to ask you a question about. So how about, can you tell me a little bit more about this feeling you have around Joe being my favorite and what's going on there? What's underneath that?
Well, that sounds like a good question, Karen.
Yeah.
So Jane might start just saying, well, Mom, I was always ignored because Joe had all those needs. And I get that you had to do those things for him, but it wasn't right for you you never went to my sporting events. You went to all his things. And so she might have a list of complaints.
Right.
So I have a couple of observations about this whole thing.
Sure.
One is get ready for a long series of conversations.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I think that's totally right.
So as soon as you hear this angst-laden statement, you can pretty much forget about negotiating the Christmas trip in this conversation because you've got bigger fish to fry, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's some good news, really, is that she's telling you she's got some problems with how you're behaving, Mom.
Right. Right.
And for you to hear that, that's opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, I could say something like, wow, it sounds like you really have some feelings from growing up about feeling ignored or lost in the shuffle or not as important. And I think that's really important. And I can understand how you feel that way. I think we should talk about that in a longer conversation
Yeah.
because you're important to me, and how you feel and how you felt growing up is really important to me.
Yeah. So you're starting off this conversation by offering
Yeah.
some validation.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly what the issues are, but you have some idea and you're offering it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If Jane's going to hear that you are trying. And so if you miss the boat a little bit, she's going to say, "No, Mom, that wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fact that, whatever it is."
Right. And you're making me think of something which I think is really important, and that's this. If you're looking for something to validate, and if you're determined to validate, you can always find something to validate in the person, in their perspective, in the conversation. There's always something worthy of being validated from that person's perspective. So kind of like what you're saying, if you're trying, you can find your way there. You can create that experience in the conversation.
Yeah. And it'll open the doors. I like the point you're making is you're approaching this conversation. You always have this validation aspect in your mind.
Yes.
And that way, when this bomb comes at you about the siblings, you don't slip into defensiveness.
Right.
You don't become angry. I mean, it's probably as a parent, you as the mom would feel really insulted and hurt and everything else. But you're there to build the relationship, to show them you can see their perspective. And then maybe they're going to be open to hearing your side of the story when they're ready.
Yes. Yeah. So I think if we have a little time left, I think we should share with people what it sounds like to be invalidated, or what invalidating communication might look like.
Yeah. So there's Paul Simon's 50 ways to leave your lover, 100 ways to invalidate your.
Well, it's surprising, but there's so many ways to invalidate. We probably don't even realize it. Like things that we just say naturally, oh, well, you should be thankful, blah, 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 blah. Or don't worry so much. Don't let it bother you. Things we think are encouraging.
Calm down. That always works.
Right. Or even, maybe we might objectively think somebody's overreacting. But if we indicate to them we think they're overreacting, that's really invalidating.
Yeah. It implies they don't have a basis to overreact.
Right. Or what about cliches?
Oh, yeah. This is a good one.
Okay. Like, look for the silver lining.
You'll understand when you're older.
Oh, no. Something we say as Christians a lot, and I think it's maybe helpful to reconsider this a little bit, but, something good will come out of this. Or there's a reason.
Work to the good for those who are in Jesus Christ.
Right. There's a reason for everything.
There's a reason for everything.
Yeah. So I just think we want to be sensitive and discerning about things like that we say and when.
Yeah, well, God will bring good out of everything, including very bad things.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that it's great. And trying to, it's not very reassuring.
Right.
To sit there and tell somebody, oh, this is God's will. It's all going to turn out fine. This isn't sitting with them. This isn't seeing things from their perspective in that moment.
Right. Or sometimes we, like as you were alluding to earlier, we could feel a little defensive. And so we want to defend ourselves. Well, that's not true. We didn't prioritize your sibling. We don't love them more than you. Or I don't do that as much as you think. You're wrong. All that is invalidating. It can be our natural reaction, and we may think it's true, and we want to validate.
Yeah, and this is a talk about relating to your young adults.
Yeah.
And these are generally true. Validating is almost always called for. I mean, sometimes you can be in a business situation where you have to defend yourself.
Yes, yes.
And you know, we could be so conditioned by our professional and our work sort of contexts that we don't have other modes of operating.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can have an instinct not to be the one that's fingered for everything that goes wrong at work.
Yes.
On and on.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to go down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
so I'll stop.
So one thing I'm thinking of here as we're talking is really validation is really just a form of showing compassion and love to another person in the midst of their own experience and sitting with them in that experience and sharing it with them. It doesn't mean we don't move forward, but it means we're there and we understand first.
Yeah, so this is a skill that really came to us through child raising and through coaching training.
Yeah.
But so many of these skills, they relate to how to be a better person, how to show up as the person that you are, that you can be, with all your great virtues, with all your great values. And the skill of validating helps you bring all that great character into play. Joseph Pieper says, he's a Thomist and a philosopher, says, love is a way of turning to the loved one and saying, it's good that you exist. It's good that you are in the world. And to love somebody, we have to see them first as a unique person, as somebody that has values and experiences and their own way of being.
Yes. Yeah. It's almost like you're validating the dignity of the human person when you validate their experience. And it doesn't mean that you want them to stay in that experience or even that they want to stay in that experience. They can have different experience and grow and learn. And there's something about their own dignity as a person with their own perspective.
So, Karen, validating, it's a way of turning towards the one to whom you are listening. It's letting them know you see and hear them standing right in front of you, knowing the beloved, that's part of loving them. So validating, treating people with love and respect and dignity, honoring their experience and perspective, validating because you want to love your neighbor and your family and your kids.
All right. So just to summarize a couple things here, takeaways. If you really want your perspective to be received by your young adult, and you want to show them that kind of love, then you have to receive their perspective first. And they have to feel and experience that they've been understood and that you've heard them. So validating their experience and their emotion and explaining why it makes sense in their situation in light of who they are and what they've experienced. So we're going to close this episode and we look forward to starting a new season next week. I'm super excited about this. It's all about creating purpose, finding mission in the second half of life. And part of that is also embracing what it means to be a human person and kind of the foundational vocation of being a human person. And part of this is going to come from some work and study Curtis and I have done on Paul, and particularly his letter to the Romans.
The letter to the Romans.
Letter to the Romans. So anyway, some scripture, positive psychology, a lot of neuroscience. We've got a lot of great things coming up for you.
Karen, I'm really looking forward to bringing all that together.
Mm-hmm.
This concludes our season on relating to your young adult children. And this is a topic that Karen and I love to give talks on, presentations, or workshops. If your group, your organization is interested in that, reach out. Let us know. You can email us at thecatholicmidlife@gmail.com or leave a comment. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
It's great to be here with you today.
Thanks again for listening to this episode. As you go forward into the week, consider the following. How will you practice validation with those around you? Where can you practice it? And is there perhaps one person that comes to mind that it would be good for you to validate more often. As I re-listened to this episode, I remembered an incident with one of my young adult children recently where I hadn't realized that I had been invalidating. But I realized it after listening. And I'm going to go now and apologize to that person and try to validate them and restore the relationship. This is your last week to consider signing up for our current session of Self-Compassion for Catholic Women, seeing yourself through the eyes of God. Classes begin on October 29th. Please visit thecatholicmidlife.com to find all the information and details and sign up for the classes. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for being here with us. The Catholic Midlife Podcast is for anyone that wants to receive the abundance of life that God has for each one of us. Take a moment right now to tell a friend about us.